Hello everybody, welcome to today's Art1st live session where I will be joined by my incredible colleague Likla, who is, in addition to the lead writer at Art1st, also the writer and author of the award-winning Art is a Verb. We're just going to wait for a few more people to join before I get Likla on board. And Likla is here, she sent a request. And she's just about to join us. So if you have any questions or comments for Likla, please feel free to share them through the chat and I'll make sure to bring them up with. Hello Likla, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, I can. Can you see me?
Oh, and you already I can see the book. I can see your book, Art is a Verb.
I'm just going to talk from behind the book this whole time.
It's quite echoey. Maybe move the book a little towards the camera so you don't keep echoing against it. Thank you so much for joining me, Likla. And I have expressed my thanks even on our video call before. So in case anybody didn't know, Instagram has a video call option that will be very useful for scenarios like these. But just to begin with, I introduced Likla before, but I'd like to go over it again. Likla is an incredibly patient, incredibly talented writer. In addition to being the lead writer, the resident writer at Art1st, she also is the award-winning author of Art is a Verb. And to just jump into it, Likla, do you mind maybe quickly giving us a run-through of what you do at Art1st? Just the Likla of it all.
Sure. I think you covered it, though. I write for Art1st. I have the very lovely job of writing for children about art and specifically about Indian art. And I get to come up with fun books like Art is a Verb. And of course, we end up doing a lot of other things at Art1st too, but I probably won't get too much into it at this point.
That's probably for the next season of Art1st. But thank you for letting us know. I'd like to now get into our usual line of questions where I begin with, Likla, what drew you to the art?
Sorry, could you repeat your question because you cut out for a second?
Oh, sure. I asked you what drew you to the arts as a student.
Okay, so I don't know if as a student is the appropriate term. Both my parents were artists. And so, and I think this is that anecdote I've shared often, but I didn't know till much later in my life that it wasn't normal for your dad to go around for walks, pick up like random dried twigs and leaves, and then make these mini sculptures every single day. I just assumed that that's what dads did. Or turned like used bulbs into little plant containers to grow them. We just had like a lot of art around me, a lot of art making around me. So even though maybe in school there wasn't, I can't remember much about an art class or particularly being drawn to it, but I think I definitely had the opportunity to grow up in an environment of art in a way. And it was, I didn't think of it that way. Like, I always thought of myself a little bit of a black sheep because my parents are artists, my sister is an illustrator, and then I'm a writer. What? So I'm really glad I got a chance to work with Art1st because it brought me to a lot of knowledge about the world of art, the different perspectives that are there. And I get to do it in my own way, which is reading a lot and then writing. So that's really fun for me.
Well, you mentioned writing, and I have a question that took me a little bit of time to come up with. But if art is a verb, does that mean writing is art? Does that still make you a black sheep?
You know, Rohina's written that as well. Writers are artists, but
writers are artists.
There are interpretations, but I'm a writer. You know, why do I need to be anything else? Thanks. My friend Rishabh has written, Likla was an artist from school.
Right
She's
from
just being
school.
modest. Thanks, Rishabh.
I'm compelled to agree with him.
But I think, since we talk about pedagogy so much and childhood experiences as well, for me, my literature class was where I got the opportunity to express myself creatively, probably for the first time. And I had a series of amazing English teachers who supported that and nurtured that. So that's probably where my artistic outlet began to find a space, and it's been with me for my whole life, regardless of what I've done. Yeah.
Oh, I really like that. And as somebody that writes a lot, you are also somebody that probably read a lot. So one of the things I'd like to share with everyone watching is that Likla is also the librarian at Art1st. And personally, I had never met a librarian except in my own schools. So, Likla, I just wanted to know, other than being the Art1st librarian, other than that being a perk, um, what does the work of a librarian look like? Or what does your day look like as Likla the librarian?
Well, at Art1st, it's pretty chill because it's not the biggest library, and it's largely for our reference. So everyone who doesn't know, we have about 2,000 plus books on art and books for children. That's the genre of our library. And Ritu's been collecting them for so many years now, and it's an incredible collection, and I absolutely love it. Um, which is why I probably have ended up with a non-official role as the librarian. And at Art1st, that entails like helping people find the appropriate book sometimes. Hey, Rohina says I'm non-threatening. I'm so threatening because people are expected to put their books away into their shelves so other people can find and refer to them. But growing up, again, like my home was full of books, but my school wasn't. We had what was essentially a closet with under a staircase which had some books, and only certain kids or certain classes got access to them. I don't think I knew it existed until 5th grade. Um, so I absolutely adore libraries. The idea that there are endless books that you can you can read, and I think that probably the romantic version of the role of a librarian to me is someone who can find you the appropriate book at the appropriate time. I know that there are books that have changed my life and the way that I think about the world, and I'm sure you've experienced that too. And those people that give you those books are so special. And of course, I'm not going to get into all of the more logistical things because to be an actual librarian, you have to have a degree in librarian studies, which I do not.
I see. See, I did not know that. And I just wanted to point out that, you know how you said the romantic notion of being a librarian is what you mentioned. And it's actually one of the 4 rules of library sciences that as a librarian, it is your role to do exactly what you mentioned. So I just think that it was quite a lovely connection that, your idea of what a librarian should be is exactly what a librarian is supposed to be. And I'm sorry, I keep getting very distracted by the comments because you're receiving just so much love and support, and
I
I'm just
know,
so
thank
happy
you
to see
guys.
that. Um,
The
well,
other
you.
aspect, sorry, the other aspect of libraries, and again the romantic version of the Library of Babel, and I think knowledge is so essential to humans and to civilization in a way, and it's always been considered
Mhm.
such a noble pursuit. And libraries, in a way, are a storehouse of all of this knowledge that is freely passed on to the next generation. So, yeah, that's the very, very romantic version of it. Somebody asked library art or library science. It is library science because there is a certain science to the way a library is arranged, and and all of the Dewey Decimal System.
The Dewey
etc.
Decimal System.
It's incredible, yeah. You were saying, Wynona.
Well, I feel like I could talk to you about libraries all day, but we are on a time limit. So I'm going to move on from Likla, the resident writer, to Likla, the librarian, and now to Likla, the award-winning artist. The award-winning author of Art is a Verb. As you know, Likla, you have worked on the incredible story that is our award-winning book, Art is a Verb. This is a question that comes from a very personal place. It's about the audience that you write for. Was there certain things that you had to face or that you had to consider when you realized that you would be introducing a very small, and by small I mean a very young audience, into this huge, vast world that is completely new to them?
Yeah,
so
it's very
what were the things that kind of, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, sorry, finish your question. I thought you were done because you froze for a second, but continue.
I was done. I was kind of filling in a couple of words.
Okay. I think it's extremely interesting as a subject, and I don't mean like a subject to study, but a subject to explore and to write about. The paintings that we selected for Art is a Verb themselves tell so many stories, and first and foremost, they were interesting to me. And that's where it begins probably. If it bores me to write it, I don't expect a reader, especially a younger reader, to be as interested in it. I actually do enjoy hanging out with kids. They're great. They like me. I think I'm similarly heightened, and they're so full of joy, and their interest to learn and play is incredible. And I think that's something I do keep in mind while writing. I don't approach it like, okay, so this book is for like 7-year-olds, so this is their vocabulary and this is what they know and they don't know. But at the end of it, the book or whatever you're creating needs to be true to whatever it is, right? You're bringing it to life, and there's something about it. It's a sense, and that's what you try to bring out the best that you can with the writing, the design, and everything. So that's sort of my approach to it. And
I think that it's a very empathetic approach. If I were to stop and think about it, I see that you're a very empathetic writer. You're empathizing with an audience. You don't really use a 7-year-old's vocabulary for a 7-year-old. You use a vocabulary that's familiar not to just them, but to just a general readership. So it's almost as if, I don't know, it feels like a very empathetic net that you're casting out. And people, adults, children, teachers, everybody seems to love the book. And I feel like the hard work that you've put in to weave this story reflects in the feedback, the reviews, and just one of my favorites is when people post boomerangs of the flaps opening and closing of Art is a Verb. So in case you guys haven't checked out Art is a Verb, you can go through our Instagram profile and you'll see that it's one of the most fun books, not because you read it, but you play with it as well. Moving on to another personal writing question, Likla. Once again, this harkens back to what you said about, writing for an age group isn't really writing for the age group because you're just writing. But when you're writing about what we do at Art1st, or when you're writing about, the marriage of language and grammar and art, you need to weave words really well in order to make it fun. But things can't always be fun. You still need to stick to the point and get the point across. So I feel from a reader's perspective, there is a balance that you strike. How difficult was it for you?
I think there isn't? It's all fun. I mean, I think that's the advantage of making fashion books. The point is whatever you choose it to be. Yes, of course, the larger goal of Art1st is art education, but there's just such an incredible amount to learn all the time that you can pick whatever you want and it could be super fun to you and then translate into a super fun book that the kids reading with it would find fun as well. So I'm not sure what you mean by serious in this process. I mean, of course, there are things like,
I feel,
you know, deadlines and stuff like that, but that's just part of life, right? Okay,
I
expand
feel
on
like
what
this
you
question
meant.
then came from, I feel like the question that I had came from a space of, being on the receiving end of a lot of feedback, where often parents were intimidated by not by the language or the story, but by the content. In that,
Right.
their go-to was, I don't get it, how can I explain it to my kid? Even though, and then, like, you kind of take them through it and explain to them that at the end of all our books, we have an index, we have an entire it's sort of like a handbook on how to approach our books, not just how to read them, but how to read the art, the many ways with which you can attempt to recreate these works on your own, the many ways in which you can kind of create your own universe from within each and every page. So I feel like that's the kind of space I was coming from.
Right. And no, you're right. There is sometimes an inhibition with books that are perceived as more difficult. But I think that's also partly because the work we do is new-ish. I mean, we're 10 years old. We're a small publishing house. So I feel like once people are more comfortable with the idea that, you know, art is for everyone, even for a really, really young child, that there's so much they can take out of that experience, um, they they may not be so intimidated by it. But it does take some time to just accept something new and give it a chance. Yeah.
I agree with. But I think it would be a really lovely world if everybody approached everything for the first time with just the lack of knowing, with absolutely no inhibitions, and probably knowing as much as, I don't know, a 3-year-old would when experiencing something like this. Because there really doesn't seem to be a reason to be intimidated by something when you don't know what you're kind of dealing with, at least before you deal with it. But thank you, Likla. That was really lovely. I really liked talking to you about this. But we're going to have to kind of loop back to a question that I was a question that I'd like to ask you about your family. You mentioned right at the beginning that you come from a family of artists, and your sister's an illustrator. And I'm curious about the exchange of ideas that took place in your home once you were familiar with the Art1st way, of writing, of kind of viewing things, but as well as our ideology and our take on art education.
Right.
There definitely was a lot of inspiration that surrounded you, and I'm sure it was a brilliant, brilliant exchange of ideas. Curious about what were the directions maybe that you guys came from or went in.
I mean, obviously, any answer to this question is completely retrospective. As a child, you're not thinking like, oh, okay, this is such a great idea, such a
Yeah,
rich
because you thought
exchange
it
of
was normal. You
ideas.
just thought it was how it was.
Yeah. But I mean, I can specifically talk about my dad. He's always been a really great storyteller. And we used to play this game, you know, in long car journeys where we would build stories together. And again, it was completely normal, but probably retrospectively, I think that has a lot to do with how I approach storytelling as well. Um, and he also had this knack for coming up with ideas about literally anything and everything all the time, and I feel like I'm maybe 10% of that. I have ideas not as good as him, but like some percentage. Yeah.
I feel like you're a pretty great problem solver, though. So ideas don't always have to be creative. Ideas can just be solutions, and you always have that. If somebody's looking at something from the front, Likla's they're looking at it from an angle, and she kind of knows exactly how to figure it out. And I just wanted to share that with everybody watching. And with that, Likla, thank you so much for letting me speak to you, and thank you so much for sharing your experiences at
Thanks.
Art1st,
Thanks for
as well
chatting with
as
me.
Art1st. Thank you. Next
Thanks,
week
Wynona.
we the tables will be turned next week when I am interviewed by my colleague Abhinav, who you guys have watched a few weeks earlier. So this should be fun, and I'll see you all next week. Thanks for joining me, Likla. Thanks for joining me, everyone.
Bye.
Goodbye.